That's me, pregnant with Wyatt. We lived in Los Angeles County. It's 2004. And at the same time that I am growing a baby in my bump, I am growing a book. And the book that I was researching at the time that we lived in Southern California was on and is on home birth midwifery, how some states let it be legal and regulated, and how some states criminalize it and make it hard to access, and how some states like Iowa just leave it unregulated. And so while I'm pregnant, I'm hanging out with midwives, and I'm hanging out with pregnant women, and I'm going to doctor's offices and yoga class and Whole Foods and the beach. And we're talking about our pregnancies, right? Because I've got the bump, and we can talk about that. And you know what else we were talking about? Julia Roberts. She was pregnant at the exact same time we were. All we wanted to talk about after we got done with our nausea, morning sickness, what are you eating conversation was, Julia is pregnant. Did you hear she's going to have a water birth at Cedars-Sinai? Did you hear it's twins? Do you know she's no longer coloring her hair because it's bad for fetal development? I wonder what she eats. Does she eat sushi? I mean, we were obsessed with Julia Roberts. And I started to watch myself watching her, and I wondered what that meant for how I was living my pregnancy. But then I moved to Iowa, had an almost 2-year-old. He is adorable. And I'm showing you his picture for purely manipulative reasons, right? Because I'm going to ask you to take a little journey with me that might require some leaps of faith. I'm going to ask you to reevaluate how you consume media images of women. But I'd like you to think that it's maybe not me asking you. It's an 8-year-old boy who was that cute when he was 2. I moved to Iowa, and I thought, my bump is gone, more or less. And I'm done with being obsessed with the bump. But we're not. As a culture, we are completely bump obsessed. You can't deny it. You stand in a supermarket checkout line, and there's Kim and Kanye, and he doesn't have the bump, thank God, right? There's Britney Spears, there's Kate Middleton. There's all these women having babies, and we are watching them. You know that show Dancing with the Stars? We are pregnant with the stars. We watch them, and we want them. We want to be them. We want to own them. We want to live like them. We're bump obsessed. So I started tearing pictures out of magazines of pregnant celebrities and putting them up on my office wall. I tore them out at the dentist office, the chiropractor, the massage place, the doctor's office, my mom's house, because she gets People and O magazine. And then students would walk into my office and they'd be like, why do you have all these images on your wall? And I would say, well, I'm writing a book about the celebrity baby bump, and then they would bring me pictures that they found. I had hundreds of images on my walls, and I started to notice some things. We have good girls who are pregnant who are good moms. We have bad girls who are bad moms, and we have hot, sexy mamas. And they're always women of color. And I started to also notice the commodification of all things pregnancy related. It didn't hurt when Billy Joel's very young wife went on E! Entertainment Television and uttered these 2 sentences. You know, I like to think of the baby bump as the next new accessory. It's kind of like a Birkin bag. I'm a simple girl from South Dakota, so I had to Google Birkin bag. It is an incredibly expensive handbag, like mega $1,000 expensive, large leather bag. Now, kids are expensive to raise, but my son is not a handbag. And my bump, I couldn't put it in the closet when I wanted to go to work or the gym or ride a train or drive my car. So I started to think about how we commodify pregnancy and all the things we need to be successful moms. And I also started to question what it means that we're watching these women and what it means culturally. I'm interested in what it does to me, right? Like, if I see someone working her pregnancy really well, do I not want to eat that cookie? But really, what does it mean culturally? That we are so obsessed with surveilling these women, with paparazzi stakeouts to try to get pictures of a new bump. I think it translates into a willingness for our bodies to be regulated and controlled. I think it translates into a willingness for us to put up with things like transvaginal ultrasounds, mandated amniocentesis, fetal protection laws that have nothing to do with protecting the fetus and have much to do with controlling my body. So I worry about what it means that we watch these women so closely. And I think, if nothing else, it gives me the feeling of the right to say to someone, you sure you want to drink that Coke when you're pregnant? You shouldn't eat sushi or lunch meat. You shouldn't smoke that cigarette or drink coffee. It gives me a feeling of empowerment over someone else's body that maybe I don't want. So I started to look into the history of the bump and how it's been regulated, and I've got to tell you, the United States has a long history of social control of women through their pregnant bodies. And for a very long time, what the United States wanted was middle-class white women to reproduce. We were heavily incentivized to produce citizens for the state. But at the same time, that bump was considered dirty. It was proof we actually had sex. So when Lucille Ball was pregnant in the 1950s, they let her be pregnant on television. She was the first woman to be acknowledged to be pregnant on TV. But they wouldn't let her utter the word pregnant. The FCC deemed it obscene. 1971, Jo Carol LaFleur is a Cleveland school teacher. In her third trimester, the school board mandated leave for her because they thought that her students would be horrified, titillated, worried by, and find gross her bump. Unpaid leave, because students might not want to see her pregnant body. Murphy Brown, she's not a real person, right? But she's a television character played by Candice Bergen, becomes a single mother on TV, and Dan Quayle writes a speech about her and the immorality of single motherhood. Demi Moore, my son saw this picture last night when I made him listen to my talk, and he did not like this. He said, she needs clothes, mama. So did a lot of people in 1991 when that cover came out. Vanity Fair had a circulation of 800,000 at that time. It sold 1 million copies. It is a good thing that we allow women to be pregnant in public. But the more things change, the more open we get, the more they stay the same. There are some pretty tired tropes of femininity, pretty limiting ways of being a pregnant woman if we look at them. You know that moment when you're pregnant, when the bump finally pops and you no longer just look chubby? That moment when women are encouraged to eat and take up a little bit more space? Well, the media really picked on Nicole Kidman and Katie Holmes, both married to Tom Cruise, completely by accident that they're treated the same way in the media, maybe. The media said, they're not fat enough, they're not gaining enough weight, they're not good moms. Their bumps aren't big enough. They're too self-disciplined to be good moms. And then Katie Holmes said she was going to have an unmedicated silent birth, given her husband's religious beliefs. T-shirts were made, free Katie, free Katie. And all of a sudden, the Tomcat romance was not adorable. She was too docile. But compare that to Jessica Simpson, who's overabundantly pregnant, to Mariah Carey, Bryce Dallas Howard, who has talked about her struggles with postpartum depression and the pressure that she got to lose a lot of weight for her industry. Kim Kardashian. Who would you rather be, the really disciplined one with the tiny bump or the laughing stock? You can either be a really good girl, someone who's huggable by Oprah, married to Ben Affleck, or you can be a bad girl, Britney Spears. You can be vilified in the press for your numerous pregnancies, told you're a bad mom because you don't lose the weight quick enough, or you have an addiction, you have some postpartum depression, maybe postpartum psychosis. Britney Spears reminds me of this bad girl, Angelina Jolie. That's her brother. Remember that freaky, kind of skeezy moment in her life? That is a bad girl until she's pregnant. Those tattoos on her arm there, those are the longitude and latitudes of where her children have been born. Angelina Jolie is a bad girl who's been redeemed by motherhood and by her role as a UNICEF and UN ambassador, talking about women and children and maternal health, and by the fact that she has a multinational crew of 6 children, 3 biological, 3 internationally adopted, and by the fact that she gave birth in Africa while on a mission to help women in poverty. She penned an op-ed in the New York Times regarding her double mastectomy, right? When she found out that she had the BRCA gene and was at a very high risk for a very deadly breast cancer, aggressive breast cancer. People lauded that decision. We could have had a national conversation about Britney Spears and postpartum depression, but we didn't. No, instead, People magazine made a survey. Who would you rather have your kids play with? Whose house should they go over to? Number 1 choice, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, because, as one respondent said, they seem the most normal. Number 2, Jennifer Garner, Ben Affleck. The very last place finisher, Britney Spears. 6% of respondents thought it would be okay for our kids to play with hers. These are sexy women. Angelina Jolie manages to be a mom and sexy, and I like that. I think that's cool. But she, Angelina, is not quite what Gwyneth Paltrow is. Gwyneth Paltrow is a MILF. I don't know if y'all, okay, good. I got some giggles, so you know what a MILF is. I'm not going to say the F word. So I will simply say that a MILF is a mother I would like to fondle. Her sexuality is controlled. It is patrician. It is blonde. It is icy. It is not the sexuality of women of color and how they're racialized during their pregnancies. Salma Hayek, Halle Berry, if you look on the blogs, if you look on Celibitchy or Just Jared or Bump Shack, there are pictures that, especially that one of Halle Berry, I've seen them where her breasts are labeled. And they've done this also with Salma Hayek. Salma Hayek's were labeled Leche Factory 1 y 2. These women, it's not about their bumps in the press, it's about their boobs. It's about this idea of unbridled fertility. The Halle Berry ones, they almost all say, whoa, mama. Whoa, Halle Berry's ready to explode. She's busting out of that dress. She's uncontrollable. She is, after all, an African-American woman in a position of power, right? Their boobs are what Beyonce and J-Lo's booties are. CafeMom.com, which is a website for moms of color, ran a contest, another poll. Who has the best butt? Beyonce won. She has a bottom with, I quote, delicious jiggle. J-Lo got 3rd place. I honestly don't remember who got 2nd place. Beyonce is interesting, too, because you see that baby, that question mark? There was actually press reporting done that said she was faking her pregnancy to be more popular. And that her bump, until she posed naked, Wyatt also didn't like that photo, until she posed naked and proved that there was a bump in there, people didn't believe her. Now, we could say that this is just the press and just us talking, but you know what? The United States has a history of exploiting the pregnant bodies of black women. Forced pregnancy through rape during slavery to keep a workforce for the South. The United States has a history of the genocide of American Indian women that wasn't just during colonization, but occurred up until 1970 with the forced sterilization of women without their consent. We have a public discourse about immigration that has trafficked in stereotypes of Latinas as overly fertile and sexually available. These images do the same thing, and we consume them. So when we're pregnant, what can we be? We can be docile and disciplined with the perfect little bump. We can be a good girl. That's the route I went, right? Good girl. You can be a bad girl. Good luck. You could be a hot, sexy mama. You could be a MILF. Come on. There have to be more ways that women can be who we are than what we're given in those images. This is a lot of text, and I'm not going to read it. I invite you to. It's from Andrea Dworkin. She wrote this a long time ago. She's a feminist theorist, and this essay is called Woman Hating. I think these images, while they pretend to celebrate women and our power, are absolutely woman-hating. She says that the relationship between beauty, standards of beauty, and our idea of what we can do ourselves, that relationship is an umbilical one. It's tied to us like the baby in the bump. What we believe about ourselves affects what we can do, affects who we are. So I ran through this with Wyatt last night. He thinks Britney Spears is awesome. It's his second favorite Pandora station. He adores Beyonce. He's horrified that we would talk about people like this. He said, "Mom, don't show those pictures. Please don't show those pictures. They're not okay." I'm not going to ask you to stop buying magazines. I'm not going to ask you to stop caring when someone gets pregnant. I mean, I can't wait for Beyonce to have a second child. No. What I want to ask you to do, the favor I'm going to ask you on behalf of our little kids, the boys and the girls, and on behalf of our collective selves, look at them a little more critically. Ask what the history is in the image that you're seeing. Ask why we participate in a popular culture that enables women to be stalked. But even more than looking at them critically, look at them a little more gently, a little more compassionately. So that, okay, we might not judge J-Lo, but how about we also not judge our friend? How about we also not judge ourselves? How about we have a umbilical relationship with our creative power that's rooted in a little bit of self-respect? Thank you.